Hello, thank you so much for coming out tonight to the Visual and Performing Arts production of Beowulf. Go, you can make noise. Yeah, this is a devised production. It's a fancy way to say it's gonna be insane. But this was working with a bunch of different translations from a 1,000-year-old text called Beowulf. We don't know who originally wrote it, but some of those folks who translated it and then informed this production include J.R.R. Tolkien, Headley, a third name that I am forgetting, but it's on the poster. So check it out. It's probably in there as well in your programs. This performance was directed by Kim H. Carrell. It was also assistant directed by Sarah Drapeau, who is in the audience and deserves your love. And it features a really wonderful, talented cast, an ensemble of Clark students who have worked really, really hard over the last few weeks to make pandemic theater happen once again, which is really magical and really cool that we can come together and celebrate that for their very first in-person live audience tonight. Some very quick trigger warnings and content warnings. There's depictions of blood, gore, violence, a little vomiting, and some loud noises and screaming, which I feel like is often happening at this building, just given what theater majors do. Yeah, I am gonna go ahead and be quiet and join you all in the audience, and let's go ahead and give another huge round of applause for our production of Beowulf this evening. Thanks for coming out, folks.
What? We garden an gerdagum, der Könige Thrum gefrunon, who the Avlingas Ellen Fremedon.
What?
What?
No, I said what? Like, I can't understand what you're saying, dude.
What? We garden.
Lo, the glory of the kings of the people of the spear Danes and days of old we have heard tell how those princes did deeds of valor.
Ooh, aren't we all just Oxford posh now? Who talks like that?
I'll have you know, rude person, I am a scholar.
Oh, right, that's who talks like that all the damn time. So, the
spear days and days gone by, and the kings who ruled them had courage and greatness. We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns.
That's nice, but I'm not really feeling it. You?
Nope, not feeling it.
Yeah, sorry, you all have to...
What?
Hello.
So,
Hello.
We garden and
No.
Gerdagum. They're Königa Thrungefrunan.
Tell me we still know how to speak of kings. In the old days, everyone knew what men were. Brave, bold, glory-bound.
We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns. There was Shield Sifson, scourge of many tribes, the wrecker of mead beaches rampaging among foes. Later, God sent Shield, a son, a wolf cub, further proof of manhood, so that life lord, that almighty big boss, birthed them a shaker. Then at his allotted hour, Shield the valiant passed.
It fell to Bayo to keep the forts, daddying for decades after his own daddy died. At last, though, it was his turn for erasure, and then his heir, the Halfdane, held sway for as long as he lived, their elder and warlord.
To him were children 4 born into the world. In this order, Hrothgar, Hrothgar, the good Helga, and a daughter. I heard the name's a blur.
You're sexist. The script is sexist, and so are you.
The fortunes of war favored Hrothgar. Friends and kingsmen flocked to his ranks. The number of his young warriors grew to a mighty company.
His hopes turned to a hall to home them.
He would command men to fashion a hall.
More than just a mead hall, a world's wonder, 8 of 7. So it rose the greater hall than any other. Hrothgar filled it blood brother by blood brother and named it Heorot. It was asking for a burning, but that hadn't happened yet. You know how it is. Every family has enemies born within it. Old grudges recrudesce.
Speaking of grudges, a powerful demon, a prowler through the dark, nursed a hard grievance.
He'd been lonely too long, brotherless, sludge-stranded. Day after day, hear the din of revelry echoing in the hall.
And the clear song of a skilled poet.
It was men, recounting the history of men like them. The Almighty made earth for us, they sang, the sun and moon for our delight. Their poetry poisoned his peace.
Grendel was the name of this grim demon. Unlucky, fucked by fate, he had dwelt for a time in misery among the banished monsters, ruling the wild. The mere, the fen, and the fastness, his kingdom.
Under a new moon, Grendel set out to spy on that lofty house. There he came upon them, asleep from their feasting and drinking, insensible to pain and human sorrow.
Suddenly, then, the god-cursed brute was craving havoc, ravenous and grim, swift and ready.
Grendel hurt, so he hunted. Nights he butchered upon their couch and rushed back to his lair. For the Danes had slept sweetly in a world that had woken him, benefited from bounty even as it had broken him.
As dawn brightened and the day broke, Grendel's powers of destruction were plain. His kills grim crimson split on banquet boards. The glorious king was numb with grief, but got no respite. For one night later, merciless Grendel struck again, a second slaying, and then another. Grendel hurt, so he hunted.
You'd have to have been a fool to miss the malice of the Hell-dweller, now Hall-dwelling. Those who lived, left. There they go. Those who stayed, slain.
So Grendel, enemy to everyone, waged his lonely war. He wrought hate and malice, evil deeds and enmity. For many a year, a strife unceasing, inflicting constant cruelties upon the people.
Grendel hurt, so he hunted. Incomplete, he raided relentlessly. Grendel was broken and would not brook peace, desist in dealing deaths, or die himself.
These were hard times, heartbreaking for the Prince of Shieldings, too. Many a mighty one oft sent communing. The highest in the land would lend advice.
Bro, let me say how fucked they were. In times of worst woe, throwing themselves on luck rather than on fate.
So it went for years. Steady affliction for Halfdane's son, who sat in silence. Too strong was that strife, too weary and dire to endure.
That wise prince sat brooding, while in the dark people shuddered, enduring raids in the night. Grendel hurt, so he hunted.
The news went global. The Knight of Hylek, esteemed among the gates, heard in his home afar of Grendel's deeds. Bro, here was a warrior like no other.
I'm sure.
In his day, he was the mightiest man on earth. High-born and powerful, he ordered a boat to be readied for his band, and boasted he'd try his teeth on this tale. He would seek the warrior king that prince renowned, since he had need of men.
Nobody tried to keep him from going, though he was dear to them. His elders understood his quest. They encouraged his valiant heart and ushered him onward. He moved about like the leader he was, enlisting men, the best he could find.
Soon it was time to depart. As sand split and surf sang, they pushed off and sent themselves to sea made men. Sailing with foam at throat, most like a bird, in due hour the second day, her curving beak had covered distance, until those seafarers sighted land, sunset cliffs, sheer crags, and looming headlands, the end of the voyage.
When the watchman on the wall, the shielding's lookout whose job it was to guard the sea cliffs, saw shields glittering on the gangplank and battle gear being unloaded, he had to find out who and what these new arrivals were.
What kind of men are you who arrive, decked out for combat, ready for war, sailing here over the sea lanes? I've been stationed as lookout on this coast. I watch the waves for raiders, any danger to the Danish shore. Never before has a force under arms disembarked so openly, not asking if the sentries allowed them safe passage. Now, before you fare inland as intruders, tell me who you are and where you hail from.
Their leader unlocked his word hole.
We are of the Gate people and honor Lord Hyalak. My father was a great man and noble warrior lord named Egthia. We come in good faith to find your lord and nation shield, the son of Halfdane. We arrived on a great errand. Now, tell me if what we have heard is true about this danger abroad in the dark night, this corpse maker mongering death. I can show wise Hrothgar a way to defeat his enemy. I can calm the turmoil in his mind.
The watchman was unmoved.
I know the difference between words and deeds, but this much I believe, that you are a troop loyal to our king. So come ahead with your arms and your gear. I'll order my own comrades to watch your boat down there on the shore and keep her safe. May one so valiant come unharmed through the battle you seek.
They continued toward Hrothgar's hall. The road was stone-cobbled, a path that kept them in marching order. In their dread gear, their war garb gleaming, they went striding straight unto the hall. So they duly arrived in Heorot, dressed for demons. They were sagging, sea-stung. A knight in proud array, of man of Hrothgar's company, inquired,
"What kingdom sent you? Boys, you've too much style to be exiled, so I expect you must be a hero sent to Hrothgar."
The man whose name was known for courage.
The man, we know him, his name means nerve.
Strong and bold, hardcore, and his helmet answered in return.
We're Hyalak's reserve, trained and ready. Beowulf is my name, and if the Halfdane's son, your leader and lord, will allow me to come to him, I'll explain my errand in just a few words.
Wolfgar, a Vendel warrior, replied.
"I will take this message to our noble king and see what, if anything, he offers in response, then hurry back with whatever reply it so pleases him to give."
With that, he turned to where Hrothgar sat. The old man was gray, huddled in pain. Wolfgar whispered the matter to his lord, and Hrothgar spake.
I knew him while he was yet a boy, and I knew his daddy's too. Ecgtheow's son and heir is here to bring health to me. Crew of mine once returned with marvelous tales that he hath in the grasp of his hand the might and power of 30 men. Hurry, let them in. How good is God?
Wolfgar returned to Beowulf and passed on Hrothgar's welcome. Beowulf arose, and with some of his men hastened through Hrothgar's radiance. He spoke.
Hail to thee, Hrothgar. I am a kinsman of Hyalak. When I was younger, no boasts, I had great triumphs. News of Grendel, hard to ignore, reached me at home. Every elder knew I was the man for you because they had all seen my awesome strength. They had themselves observed it. Anyone who fucks with the gates, bro, they have to fuck with me. I deal them death, woe they had asked for. Now, I mean to be a match for Grendel. Just us two, hand to hand. Sweet. I have but one request. It's that you won't refuse me the privilege of purifying Heorot. When we see who wins, we'll know who's got God's favor. If the battle does take me, don't cry for this broken boy. Just send my mail shirt off to Hyalak. Horrors happen. I'm grown. I know it. Fate goeth wherever as she must. Bro, fate can fuck you up.
Hrothgar had some things to say.
Beowulf, my friend, you have traveled here to favor us with help and to fight for us. Your father, I knew him from a feud, which he began. He was exiled by his people, and he came away over the rolling waves to the South Danes here. I had just become king. Herogar, my older brother and the better man, had died. Finally, I healed your father's feud by paying, and he acknowledged me with oaths of allegiance. Oh, it hurts my head that the world should know of my grief as their laughter in far-off places at me and at my men. Diminished as my company of my whole, the ranks of my warriors. Know before you dine, Beowulf, your predecessors are deceased. Sit now, and when the time comes, turn thy thought to victory.
Beowulf and his men dined in splendor with Hrothgar and his men. There was mirth and... Y'all are gonna do me like that in front of a live audience.
It's in the script.
And at their shoulders stood a server who bore in hand the jeweled ale goblet, pouring bright helpings of mead. A bard sang, no, come on, the middle of my sentence. A bard sang, gladdening that great rally of Geats and Danes.
Unferth, who crouched at the king's feet, was pissed. The quest of Beowulf come thus boldly over the sea, and the idea that another may enjoy greater greatness than him made him bristle. He spoke.
Bro, do you happen to be the Beowulf who challenged... who challenged Brecca on the open ocean, risking the waters just to prove you could win?
Yeah, that's me.
The oceans swayed. The water went wild in the waves. But you vied for 7 nights. It was sheer vanity. For no reason but to prove your pretty prowess. To prove your petty prowess.
Oh. You made it.
And then, he outswam you. He had greater strength. His boyish boast was proven. He bested Beowulf. But I expect for thee a yet worse encounter. No one has ever outlasted an entire night against Grendel.
You done? Hello, my friend, Unferth. Buddy, sit down, you're drunk. You've had your say about Brecca and me, but it was most of the beer that was doing the talking, right? Because the truth is, I was the strongest swimmer in all those ways. I have been better on the water, deeper in the drink, and stronger in the swim than any other man. You know, I've racked my brain, bro, but Unferth, I can't recall a single fight you entered that bears comparison. You haven't actually achieved so daring a deed with blood-stained blades. No, I'm not even going to mention your sins, your kin-killing, your brother-beating. I'm not the man to damn you there. No shit, though, Unferth. If you were truly as keen or courageous as you claim to be, never would Grendel have achieved so many a deed of horror. Because he knows he need not fear your blade. Your sword is soft, son.
Oh, shit.
That's a dick joke.
But he will find me different. He will fear me. I will oppose him with the might and valor of the gates. And after the night's been mine, if you brave boys feel like drinking, I'll serve you ale for breakfast.
You know that
It's time to go, bud. It's time to go. This speech was more than enough to convince the ring-giver, prince of the glorious Danes. He counted on Beowulf, on the warrior's steadfastness. There was laughter of mighty men and again.
Yes.
And the crowd was happy.
Wealthia went forth, Hrothgar's queen, observing the courtesies gleaming her golden gown. She chose her chance to charm. She greeted the men in the mead hall, and then the cup she offered. She bore it first to Hrothgar, her husband and homeholder. She held it to his lips, and he drank deeply. She went around offering the goblet to all of the ranks. Until Beowulf was before her. Fingers outstretched, he accepted the cup, a daunting man, dangerous in action and eager for it always. Beowulf sipped his mead and assured the queen.
Woman,
Queen!
I knew my plan when I set off for this coast. This did I purpose, that I wholly would accomplish the desires of your people. I shall make your sleep safe or be slain myself.
Then, out of the night, Grendel emerged, a shadow walking. The hall guards, the spearmen were slack, sleep sagging. Just one Thane waited in a fighting mood, feigning sleep, awake and on edge, on high alert, spoiling for action.
He came now from the moor, hidden by the fog. God-cursed Grendel came greedily lopping, grudge worsening. This was not the first time he had had such bad luck hunting in Harrowit Hall, but he had never had such bad luck. The iron door was about to turn on its hinge as the wind howled. His hand neared. He was close, but he was not yet there. As he entered the hall, his rage ratcheted up, and he ripped open the gaping entrance of the house. Pacing the length of the patterned floor, he and the house espied there many a men asleep, roosting like roasting chickens. But his fate was due to change. Grendel's goose would be cooked.
Fervid and flexing, faking sleep, Hyalek's kinsman was keenly watching, scanning slit-eyed the long-haunted hall awaiting. Nor did the hunted hunter keep him waiting, but struck suddenly, snatching a sleeper, sucking him bone dry. Bitten his bone lappings, great gobbets gorging down. Here a throat, there a head, fingers, feet, dead.
Onwards and nearer he stepped, his talon was raised to attack Beowulf. The captain of evil discovered himself in a hand grip harder than anything he had ever encountered in any man on earth. Every bone in his body recoiled, but he could not escape.
Then he who had harrowed the hearts of men with pain and affliction in former times found that his bodily powers failed him. Hyalek's kinsman kept him helpless, locked in a grip. The monster's whole body was in pain. Sinews split and bone lappings burst. Beowulf was granted the glory of winning. Grendel was driven under the fen banks, fatally hurt to his desolate lair. His days were numbered. The end of his life was coming upon him. He knew it for certain.
The gate captain had fulfilled his boast to the Danes. Clear proof of this could be seen in the hand of the hero displayed in the hall. The whole of Grendel's shoulder and arm, his hell-born grasp. Then morning came, and many a warrior gathered around the hall. Clansmen from far and near, wondering at the monster's footprints. His dying departure was regretted by no one.
Beowulf's doings were praised over and over again. Never, it was said, between the two seas or under the tall sky was there anyone better to raise a shield or rule a kingdom. But there was no laying of blame upon their lord. Hrothgar was a good king. When Hrothgar arrived, he spoke.
Suffered a long harrowing by Grendel. Not long since it seemed I would not be granted the slightest solace or relief. But now a man, with the aid of the gods, has accomplished what none of us could. Beowulf, I adopt you in my heart as a dear son. There'll be nothing you'll want for, no worldly good that will not be yours. You have made yourself immortal by your glorious actions.
Beowulf spoke at last.
If you could have seen the monster himself where he lay beaten, I would have been better pleased. I couldn't stop him from slipping my hold. But he bought his freedom at a high price. He left his arm to show that he had been here. Now he won't be long for this world. He has done his worst, but the wound will end him.
Fucking gross, man. No, don't you dare. Yeah.
Dude.
There was less big talk than from Unferth the boaster, less of his blather.
Then the order was given to refurbish Heorot, men and women thronging the mead hall, making it ready. The king himself would sit down to feast. No group had ever gathered in greater joy for their ring-giver. The benches were filled with famous Ren. Round upon round of mead was passed. These powerful kinsmen were in high spirits in the rafted hall. Inside Heorot, there was nothing but friendship. The shielding nation was not yet familiar with feud and betrayal. The queen spoke.
Enjoy this drink, my generous lord. Raise up your goblet. Entertain the gates. Discourse with them. Relish their company. For the court of Heorot has been cleansed. And now the word is that you want to adopt this son, this warrior, as a son. He is noble. He will not let you down. He will honor, I hope, our two sons and pay them in kind when he recollects all of the wonderful things we gave him once.
Men drank wine and mead at that rare feast. How could they know fate? The grim shape of things to come, the looming threat. As night approached and Hrothgar prepared to retire to his quarters, benches were pushed back. Bed biers and bolsters spread across the floor.
They went to sleep, and one paid grievously for his rest that eve. This was nothing new, given Grendel's former residence in the Golden Hall.
Plain it was made and published abroad among men that an avenger to succeed their foe lived yet.
Grendel's mother.
Monstrous Hellbride.
Warrior woman.
A fierce destroyer in the form of woman.
Mother! Who meditated on misery. She lived ill-fated. She had been forced down into fearful waters, her kingdom under country. Beowulf killed her son.
Grendel was banished and accursed. And Beowulf was mindful of his mighty strength, the generous gifts that God had given him.
Beowulf saw himself as God's gift, Grendel as a goner. Broken and bowed, Grendel had fled piecemeal and made for his death den. Now his mother was here, grief-racked and ravenous, on a journey full of woe, looking for someone to slay, someone to pay in pain. She hurt, so she hunted in Heorot.
She had pounced and taken one of the retainers. To Hrothgar, this man was one of the most beloved of the friends he trusted. Beowulf had slept elsewhere. Heorot Hall howled. She had snatched their trophy.
The arm she knew so well.
With the break of day, Beowulf was hustled, hung over into the chamber where the king in his wisdom waited.
Hrothgar waited, grim and gloomy, wondering if his fate was fucked forever. Beowulf asked the king if he had slept well.
Hrothgar had no words. He said some anyways.
Rest? What is rest? Sorrow has returned. Dead is Ashir, my best friend. Sorrow, death has come upon him, and Heorot at the hands of a wandering, murderous thing. This is on you. She threw herself into blood feud after you slew her son.
Hrothgar ordered Beowulf to the monster's home to end the feud once and for all. Beowulf was down.
No worries, wise one, I've got this. Better is it for every man that he should avenge his friend than he should much lament. We're all gonna die someday, but most of us won't go out in glory. However, here's what matters, though, for men. Not living, but living on in legend. I guarantee you, she will not get away. Endure your troubles today. Bear up and be the man I expect you to be.
The old lord leaped to his feet and praised Beowulf for his courage. Forth went the company of his warriors.
They followed the murderer's track on foot, leaving their own uncovered. They had no need to hide their hunting from her. They passed steep, stony slopes, razor-edged rocks, perilous passageways off map, along narrow footpaths and ways where they were forced single file, many a house of demons on the deep.
Their scouts went ahead to spy the land and suddenly discovered the dismal wood. Mountain trees growing out at an angle above gray stones, blood-stained and troubled water looms beneath.
Whereupon
was the mere.
Where upon the cliff and above the deep they suffered afresh to discover a dark gift, the head of a shear. The company stared as water boiled with blood and bones. It was infested with all kinds of writhing serpents, monsters too many to mention.
Serpentine, strange dragons of the sea, lizards lounging and lethargy. Into the depths they dived, furious and frightened, for they had heard the clangor of war horns in their secrets. They have heard the clangor of war horns, the shrillness of secrets in their secret space. One of the gated chiefs with an arrow from his bow got one of them as it surged to the surface. An arrow pierced its scales, and its freedom in the water got less and less. The other man, invigorated, sought to join in the killing. This monster they could control. The creature was cornered, clubbed, beaten, pulled up on the bank. The men gazed at it in awe.
Meanwhile, Beowulf gave zero shits. In warrior's harness, he got ready, indifferent to death. He'd meet this murdering monster and amend her existence. To guard his head, he had a shiny, glittering helmet. His mighty hand-forged, fine-webbed mail would keep the bone cage of his body safe. No weaknesses here.
Last but not least, Unferth unexpectedly stand for Beowulf at that moment of need and handed him a hilted weapon, a rare and ancient sword named Hrunting. Never had it in warfare failed the hand of anyone who had hefted it in battle. This was a sublime soldier sword, and it wasn't the first time it had urged its user to perform a feat.
Note, he had been blackout drunk when he had said the stuff he said. The rant he decanted into Beowulf's ear, he wasn't man enough to wade beneath the warring waves and deeds of prowess performed, so he sought not to risk his own skin, but he forfeited glory for heroic fame. The son of Ecgtheow spoke.
If this combat kills me, take care of my comrades in arms, my company, and be sure also to send Hylak the treasures I received. Let the Lord of the Gates gaze on that gold, and Unferth is to have what I inherited. To him I bequeath my sharp-honed blade. With Hrunting, I shall gain glory, or die!
Oh, if only. Then, without more ado, the Prince of the Weathergates! He dived into the heaving depths of the lake. It was the best part of a day before he could see the solid bottom.
Quickly, the one who had haunted those waters sensed a human observing her lair from above. She lunged and clutched him in her brutal grip, but her savage talons failed to rip the war mail of his war shirt.
Then that wolfish swimmer carried the prince to her court, so that for all his courage, he could never use the weapons he carried.
He heaved his war sword and swung his arm. The decorated blade came down upon her head, but the shining blade refused to bite and failed the man in his need. Here at last the fabulous powers of that heirloom failed. She rose quickly and retaliated, grappling him in her trite embrace. The sure-footed fighter dealt daunted. The strongest of warriors stumbled and fell.
Then he saw a blade that boded well, a sword in her armory, an ancient heirloom from the days of the giants. So the shielding's hero, hard-pressed, took firm hold of the hilt and swung, a resolute blow that bit deep into her neck bone, toppling the doomed house of her flesh. She fell to the floor.
A light appeared, the way the sun does when the sun is shining clearly. Beowulf inspected the vault. He saw the monster Grendel in his resting place, war-weary and wrecked, a lifeless corpse, a casualty. The body gaped at the stroke dealt after death. Beowulf cut the corpse's head off.
Those watching spoke in their sage way about the good warrior. They never expected to see the prince returning in triumph to their king, but Ecgtheow's son made for land, delighted with his prize, the mighty load he lugged to the surface.
In came he then to hero it. The arch-warrior came to address Hrothgar. Grendel's head was hauled by the hair across the floor, a horror for the company to behold. Beowulf spoke to Hrothgar.
Prince of the Shieldings, I have wrested the hilt from the hand of the enemy, avenged the evil done to the Danes. It is what was due. And now, this I pledge. You may sleep secure with your company in the halls of Heorot. Never need you fear for a single thane of your nation.
Then everyone hushed as the son of Halfdane spoke to Beowulf.
A protector of his people is entitled to affirm that this man was born to distinction. Beowulf, my friend, I stand firm beside the promise of friendship that was exchanged before. Forever will you be your people's mainstay and helping hand. But flower of warriors, I tell you, choose, dear Beowulf, eternal rewards. Do not give way to pride. For a brief while your strength is in bloom, but it fades quickly. Your piercing eye will dim and darken, and death, dear warrior, will one day arrive. But for this day, take your place and move now to the feast.
And soon all was restored, the same as before. The hall was thronged and a banquet set forth.
A need for rest came over the brave, shield-bearing Gate. He was a weary seafarer, far from home. Soon it was come to pass that Hrothgar must speak his farewell.
You are strong of body, mature of mind, impressive in speech. If it should come to be that deadly battle of the sword fells the prince who guards your people, I firmly believe the seafaring Gates will find no man worthier of acclaim as their king and defender than you, if only you would undertake the lordship of your homeland.
Heroic Beowulf and his men crossed the wide sea to return to the land of Hylak. Beowulf's return was reported to the king as soon as possible. His battle brother was back from the fray.
His story was told in Hylak's halls, and mead was drunk to his glory.
Much was to happen in the later days in the fury of battle. Hylak fell, and shields fell useless against the fierce aggression of seasoned campaigners, ruthless swordsmen.
When Hylak was cut down, the wide kingdom reverted to Beowulf. He ruled it well for 50 winters, grew old and wise as the warden of the land, until one began to dominate the dark.
A dragon on the prowl formed the steep vaults of a stone-roofed barrow where he guarded a treasure hoard. There was no passage in known to men, but a thief managed to enter and interfere with the heathen trove.
He removed a gem-studded goblet. It gained him nothing, though with a thief's wiles he had outwitted the sleeping dragon. This drove the dragon into a rage, however, as the people of that country would soon discover.
Long ago, with deliberate care, someone now forgotten had buried the riches of a high-born race in this ancient cache.
Then an old harrower of the dark happened to find the hoard, the slick-skinned dragon threatening the night sky. He is driven to hunt out hoards under the ground, to guard heathen gold through age-long vigils. For 3 centuries, the scourge of the people had stood guard on that treasury until the intruder unleashed its fury. The Hoard Guardian scorched the ground as he scoured and hunted for the trespasser who had troubled his sleep. And so, the son of Ectheo had survived every extreme, excelling himself in daring and danger until the day arrived when he had to come face to face with the dragon. The Lord of the Gates had discovered the cause of the affliction being visited upon his people. Beowulf spoke, made formal boast for the last time.
I risked my life often when I was young. Now I am old, but as king I shall pursue this fight for the glory of winning. I would rather not use a weapon if I knew another way to grapple with the dragon and make good my boast as I did against Grendel in days gone by. I will be facing molten venom in the fire he breathes, so I go forth in mail, shirt, and shield. I am resolved! This fight is not up to you, nor it is up to any man but me to measure his strength against the monster. I will win the gold by my own courage, or else doom of battle will bear your lord away.
Then he drew himself up, trusting in his own strength, and went under the crag. Hard by the rock face, a gushing stream burst forth from the barrow, a blazing heat. It would be hard to survive unscathed near the hoard, to hold firm against the dragon in those depths. Then the Lord of the Gates broke out in a storm of anger. His voice challenged and resounded clearly. The Hoard Guard recognized a human voice. The breath of the monster burst from the rock. Down there in the barrow, Beowulf the warrior lifted his shield. The outlandish thing writhed and convulsed and viciously turned on the king, whose sword was already in hand. Roused to a fury, each antagonist struck terror in the other. Beowulf stood sure of his ground while the serpent looped and unleashed itself. That final day was the first time Beowulf fought, and fate denied him glory in battle. The king of the gates struck at the enameled scales, but scarcely cut through. The blade flashed, but the blow was far less than he had need of in that moment. No help or backing was to be had from his high-born comrades. They broke rank and ran to the safety of the woods. But within one heart, sorrow welled up. In one of worth, the claims of kinship will not be denied. His name was Wiglaf. When he saw his lord tormented by the heat of the beast, he could not hold back. He drew his sword to enter the battle with his lord, his first time to be tested as a fighter. He addressed his companions.
I remember when the mead was flowing, how we pledged loyalty to our Lord. Promised our ring giver we would be worth our price. Now the day has come when the Lord we serve needs sound men to help him through the flame. Should he alone be left exposed to fall in battle? We must bond together. I would rather my body were robbed in that same burning blaze as my gold giver's body than return home bearing arms. Beowulf, your deeds are famous. Stay resolute, my lord. I shall stand by you.
After those words, a wildness arose in the dragon and drove it to attack again. Inspired by the thought of glory, Beowulf threw his whole strength behind a sword stroke, but the iron gray sword let him down in the fight. Then the bane of the people, the fire-breathing dragon, was mad to attack again. He caught the hero in a rush of flame and clamped sharp fangs into his neck. Beowulf's body ran wet with his life's blood. Once again, the king gathered his strength and drew a knife he carried on his belt. He stuck it deep in the dragon's flank. Beowulf dealt it a deadly wound. Partners in nobility had destroyed the foe. But now for the king, this would be the last of his many labors and triumphs in the world. The wound dealt by the ground burner began to scald and swell. Beowulf knew that deadly poison was suppurating inside him. He realized his state and struggled toward a seat on the rampart. Wiglaf, with his own hands, washed his lord's wounds, swabbed the weary prince with water, unbuckled his helmet. Beowulf spoke in spite of his wounds, for well he knew his days in the world he had been lived out to the end.
That was the time when I would have wanted to bestow this armor on my own son, had it been my fortune to have fathered an heir. I ruled this nation for 50 years. No king of any neighboring clan ever had power to intimidate me. I took what came, never took what was not mine, never fomented quarrels, never swore to a lie. This consoles me, doomed as I am and sickening to death. Go now quickly, dearest Wiglaf. The dragon is laid out, lost to his treasure. Feast your eyes on the hoard.
The son of Weohstan obeyed the command of his languishing, war-weary lord. He saw beyond the seat a treasure trove of astonishing richness, glittering gold and vessels from the past, rings and armbands everywhere, artfully wrought. Wiglaf went quickly, keen to get back, and found his lord bleeding profusely, his life at an end. An utterance broke out from the old king's breast cage.
I give thanks that I've been able to leave my people so endowed on the day that I die. And now it is up to you to look after their needs. I can hold on no longer. You are the last of us. Fate has swept us away, sent my brave highborn clan to their doom. Now I must follow them.
Then Wiglaf, stalwart to the end, had orders given to fetch wood from far and wide for the good man's funeral pyre. Next, the wise son of Weohstan called from among the king's thanes a group of 7. He selected the best and entered with them. It was no trouble to work and haul out the priceless store. They pitched the dragon over the cliff top, let tides flow and backwash take the treasure minder. The gate people built a pyre for Beowulf, stacked and decked until it stood 4 square. Then his warriors laid him in the middle of it, mourning a lord far famed and beloved. On a height they kindled the fire, the hugest of all. The blaze roared and drowned out their weeping.
Then the gate people began to construct a mound on the highland, high and imposing, a marker that sailors could see from far away. It was their hero's memorial, what remained from the fire. They housed inside it behind a wall, as worthy of him as they could make it. And they buried torques in the barrow and jewels. They let the ground keep the ancestral treasure, gold underground, gone to the earth.
Then the warriors strode around the tomb, all of them distraught, chanting in dirges, mourning the loss of a man and king. They gave thanks for his greatness, which was the proper thing. So the gate people, his companions, sorrowed for their lord who had been laid low. Of all the kings upon the earth, the man most gracious and fair-minded.
He was our man, but every man dies.